So let's talk about how to use the ML01. When you open the scene, this is what you're going to see. There's a system of hanging lights and there's a system of floor lights. And they work exactly the same way. They're just designed for different applications. The hanging lights have C-clamps and are meant to be used overhead. And the floor lights don't have C-clamps and are designed to sit on decking or staging. So I'm only going to talk through the hanging lights today, but just know that the floor lights work exactly the same way. Before we start with the lights, there's three things this system needs to work properly. And the first one is a Redshift environment. This is what's going to give us the actual volumetric beams. I've added one to this scene. If you want to add one to your scene, come to Create, Environment, Redshift Environment. Now I've also added some noise to break up the haze a little bit. If you don't like this, just come to the Redshift environment and delete this texture tag. You can also come into the material and edit this if you want to change the properties of the noise. So set this to however you like. The other things that we need are within the Redshift render view itself. So if I come to the settings cogwheel and open this up, I've activated bloom and I've activated streak. And this is what's going to give us the lens flare effect around the light. You can adjust these to however you like, but these will happen globally throughout the whole scene. So those three things are what we need to get started and for the system to work. All right, let's look at the first light, the ML01. All the controls you need for the light can be found in one tab here in the attributes palette, starting with movement. So this is how you're going to focus the light. You can adjust the pan and tilt here manually. You can use the sliders inside the fields. You can manually enter, or you can just use the actual physical sliders. Totally up to you. Below that are all the controls for the actual light itself. So we can turn the light on and off with this checkbox. And then Redshift lights have intensity and exposure. So I've put both of these controls here. It just depends on which you are more comfortable with. So I can play manually here with the intensity of the light. And then I can also use exposure if I really want to go supersonic. It just depends on what you are most comfortable with. And while the intensity of the light affects the volumetrics, there is also a separate control for the contribution to the volumetrics. So on a per light basis, you can really control how much haze is kind of visible coming out of each light. Below that, we have the light spread. The ML01 works with an area light. So this is how we control the size of the beam. If I dial this down, I can get real narrow into kind of Sharpie territory, or I can open up to get a really kind of wide beam of light here. And then we have the color controls. This works exactly as you would imagine. So you could just come in here and dial in whatever color that you want. If you twirl this open, there are multiple ways to input colors inside of Cinema 4D. So this lets you use just whichever system you are kind of most comfortable with. And then below this, we have the include and exclude. So this works just like any other light inside of Cinema 4D. Let me add a little bit of geometry here to the scene. Move my cube over. I'm going to just lower the volumetric intensity a little bit here, just so you can see it clear. So anything that I drag and drop into this field from the scene will be excluded from this light. So if we were to take the cube and drag and drop, you'll see the light is no longer hitting the cube. Or if I were to reverse this and say include, it's only going to hit the cube and it's not going to hit any of the other geometry in the scene. So this works just like every other light inside of Cinema 4D. Just put the controls right here in the ML01 system for you so you can control it all from one place. Now we'll look at the ML01T. The T is for target. This light operates pretty much the same way as the ML01, but we're going to focus it differently. If I twirl this open, you'll see there's a target object here. And anywhere that I move the target, the light will follow. So the light works pretty much the same way. It just gives you this non-rendering target to be able to position anywhere that you want. And you can make this target a child of other objects in your scene, or you can keyframe it if you want to animate the light moving. Totally up to you. And the actual light properties itself, these all work exactly the same as the other system. Now let's look at the ML01 CS. The CS is for cloner straight. The previous lights, you can absolutely put these into the cloning system inside of Cinema 4D, and they work really well. This one is designed to do things a little bit differently and to give you a little bit more control if you need it. So I'm going to skip over beam type for a moment. We'll come back to that. And we'll jump right into the cloning controls. So built right into the interface here, we've got count, position, and some step rotation. So I can up the count here to add more lights to the system. The slider is going to max out at 20, but you can actually take this higher, and it will max out at 100 lights if you want. And then below this, I've got position X, Y, and Z. So by default, the light is spaced out in 4-foot increments here, but I can dial this in to be whatever I want. And again, same thing, the slider goes to 120, but you can go beyond that to whatever you need for the spacing. And then you can also then offset in Y, positive and negative. And you can also offset in Z to move things kind of upstage and downstage, however you want. Bring these back to 0. And then I've also added this step rotation in H. This just lets you give the lights a little bit of curvature. There is a separate system for doing curved truss. This is mostly, I think, for the floor lights. If you have a curved deck or a curved apron front, this is just going to let you kind of get just a little bit of an arc going inside of it if you need it. And then, as with all the other lights, the controls for the actual lights all work exactly the same way. So you can really come in here and just dial in all the properties that you want. It even has include and exclude in here. So what's up with this beam type? So here's how the system works. This light is based off a target system here. So if we zoom out a little bit here, let's give us our target. So anywhere that I move the target for this light, all the beams will follow. And what's happening here is that the first light in the system is focused on the target, and then all of the clones followed that same angle, just like you would expect, right? So what's happening is the beams are actually running parallel to each other. And that's why by default here, we're in parallel mode. But if I switch over to target mode, what happens is all of the lights now are going to just follow this target wherever they are. So it's up to you how you want to use this. If you're trying to get a system of lights to focus in on a singer or on part of the set, you can use it in target mode. If you're building an overall system that you want to just kind of make an array of beams that are parallel, you can use it kind of this way. And you can keep jumping back and forth, and you can always adjust the properties of the light midstream here, and then just keep moving back and forth between the systems. Now, the other thing is there is this reverse button. And so what's happening here is that when we're in target mode, all the light beams are focused at the target, moving towards one point in space. With reverse, it does the opposite. It actually literally spins the head of the light around. And now what's happening is that the light beams are, instead of being attracted to the target, they're being repelled by the target. So if you want to do kind of a fan of lights, this is how you're going to do it. You want to actually move the target upstage of the lights here. So if we come into kind of a plan view here, you can see that if we're looking down on this, as we move the target closer to the lights, they fan out more and more. And the further upstage we go, the more parallel they become. So this just gives you the ability to come in here and really kind of play around with spreading these fingers out however you want. And then if you uncheck target, it just will move back to how you expect the system to go. So this is the most complex of all of the lights because it kind of does the most things. If you don't need this targeting or this reverse capability, you absolutely can use any of the first two lights inside of a cloner. But this system just kind of puts it all in one for you to try to hopefully give you the most amount of options and the most amount of flexibility that you might need. And then the final ML01 light is the CC, the cloner curved. So this is designed for curved truss. Again, the light system is going to work exactly the same as all of the other lights and let you just dial in everything that you need for the light right from this control panel. This works off of a pan and tilt system as well. So you can control all of the attributes for the movement of the light right here. And then this has cloner controls built in as well. So you can raise and lower the number of clones. And again, this is going to max out at 20, but you can kind of keep going if you really need a ton of lights. And then the radius is going to let you control the scale of the ring so that you can kind of fit this to any size circular truss that you want. Now, I've also included the angle controls, and so this lets you do partial arcs. By default, we're do a full 360 degrees, but by changing the start angle or the end angle, or any combination of these, you should be able to create any kind of arc setup and system that you want inside of it. And then, like I said, the actual kind of properties of these lights all work exactly the same as the rest of the lights inside of the system. And so this really is everything in the ML01 system.